All right. Hello, everyone. MJ Clay, broker realtor with Carrot Properties, serving North and South Carolina, coming to you tonight. Um, Hopefully, you all can see me on Facebook. Um, and if you're not able to watch live, if you're not watching this live, then hopefully you are able to catch the recording of this. Um, I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. I wanted to share some information that I think is very important, especially as we head into the holiday season. This year, let me back up. I know many of you know me as a realtor, but I'm also an attorney. And people often contact me about, downsizing, um, estate planning with their loved ones. And a lot of times when I get those calls, it's kind of when something is going on. And so I thought to myself, after having several conversations with my colleagues and different folks, that this would be a great time to provide some tips and tools to all of my friends in real estate land about how to have this conversation with your loved ones, how to discuss downsizing, aging in place, and estate planning. Just a disclaimer, nothing I say today is official legal or real estate advice. This is general information that I'm sharing just for you to kind of start the process. I highly recommend that if you have specific situations and questions that you're going through, that you consult an attorney, a financial advisor, and professionals who are related to the loved ones that you are discussing. Sometimes that may mean the VA, sometimes that may mean certain government agencies. But a lot of times people don't even know how to start the conversation. And so, thank you for joining me. I want to make sure that I make it clear that I'm not giving official legal or real estate advice, but just general information. So, let's first start with downsizing and how that conversation normally goes. Many folks remember in the mid to late 80s, early 90s, a lot of folks were buying mini mansions, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square foot homes. Some of us grew up in homes like that. Some of us grew up in homes that have, 5 to 6 bedrooms, whatever. And now we have our loved ones, may they be parents or whomever, who are in these houses and they're empty nesters. Some people have experienced loss, and now we may have a loved one who's living in a house that's way too big for just their individual needs. Um, what do you do? How do you say, hey, mom, hey, dad, I think it's time to sell the family home, or I think it's time to think about maybe something more manageable for you? A lot of builders right now are building homes for multi-generational setups. They're having Lennar Homes in particular, they have a really nice home plan where they have like an apartment on the main level. It's just enough space and privacy where, you know, someone who wants to be independent but also probably needs to be around family has the space that they need, but also gives privacy to the other occupants in the house. So I think the way that it is very important to keep in mind, a lot of times people have lived in these homes for extended periods of time. They have a lot of personal items and possessions that they want to hold on to and keep. They have a lot of connections and roots, maybe in the community. Their church may be close by, medical facilities, doctors, friends, social groups, things of that nature. And so it can be a little bit scary thinking about, how do I get rid of all of my stuff? Why are you trying to make me get rid of my stuff? I don't want to move away from my friends and loved ones. Um, and so while those things may be true, there's also the financial component. Why would I sell a house that I own outright? Why would I, go into debt for another house? That sometimes is a conversation. And, while these are real questions, you you have to kind of figure out what's important to them. Are you dealing with someone who likes to travel? Are you potentially explaining to them that by selling the house or by transferring it to another protection mode, like a trust, or going ahead and giving it to whomever they want to have it in the long run, that may actually be protecting their legacy, which is what we'll talk about towards the end of today's live cast. So when you're thinking about downsizing, it's not just, selling the house, starting from scratch, moving in with family. Sometimes you just need a smaller home. You need something that maybe has the main bedroom. We don't call it a master bedroom anymore. We call it the main bedroom or primary bedroom on the main level of the home. Maybe we don't even need a 2-story home anymore. Maybe since everyone is grown now or on their own, we don't need as big of a house because we don't have as many people living with us. Sometimes even pointing out that the maintenance of a sizable home or home that maybe is not even fully being used is a good reason to consider downsizing. In the downsizing process, the next question that always comes is, how would I go about doing this? I don't want to sell my house. I don't want to show my house. I don't want to have to go through that process. And as a professional who has training in dealing with these types of issues, there are ways that we can assist in not only getting the house sold, but preparing the house through staging, helping to declutter or decide what items need to stay or need to be preserved for later. Also assisting in finding housing that is suitable based on their current needs. We're all going to age. We're all going to get older, and the current generation ahead of Gen Xers, I think is what we are, they're living longer. They're living fuller lives. They're having, second careers after retirement. They are enjoying life in a way that maybe their predecessors did not. And so what's the point of having a mega house that you only use a third of the house? What's the point of having, 5 bedrooms when really you only need 2? Or what's the point of having a attic full of memories when they're not categorized, you don't know what they are, and they're potentially not being preserved in a way that keeps them as legacies or memories? So these are all things that, I recommend you think about. Following today's live cast, I'm going to provide a couple resources. One is a script, a conversation script that you can share, or you can kind of look at and say, okay, this is a great way that I can start the conversation with my family, my loved ones. It could be an aunt, uncle, whomever, and kind of slowly soften them to the idea or introduce the idea of downsizing. In addition to that, I have a kind of a checklist of things to keep in mind when you're considering downsizing and considering making a move from one space to the other. I want to also point out that downsizing doesn't necessarily mean the house itself. It could mean maybe we don't need to be on an acre anymore. And what is the goal for this land, this home, when you're no longer here? So we'll talk about this legacy and estate planning later, a little bit further in the call. But I don't think a lot of us and a lot of our elders realize that something that you've worked for your whole life could potentially not be passed down the way you intend due to medical bills or debts, or not being clear in your intention, i.e. providing a will at the time of your passing, or even considering putting those items in a trust that protects them from certain debtors or certain attachments that could take it away from the family. Some families, I'll use a family I know, they have about 30 acres in a very small rural county, but it was a big deal because this land has been in the family almost 100 years. And so some of the family members are very adamant that they want to keep it in the family, even selling it to other family members. Some family members don't know the history and they don't care, or they don't know to be in tune to what maybe their uh, um, I won't say their ancestors, but their prior family members desired. There's especially in a lot of marginalized Black and Brown communities, land ownership, home ownership is a big deal. And a lot of our grandparents and four family members fought in wars just so they could get VA benefits to buy homes. They had to scrimp and save and go through a lot of things to acquire the assets they have. And so a lot of times when they get to be older, they're very adamant about holding on to it and they don't want to downsize. They don't want to get rid of it. One, because it means a lot to them. Two, sometimes they feel like it will not be handled correctly. And so by having these conversations early, having the conversations when everything is kind of calm, there's nothing going on, it allows you to think more clearly and make a clearer decision, and allows them to think more clearly and make a clearer decision and feel like they're somewhat in control versus maybe having to make this decision when there is an emergency or there are emergent circumstances going on. So it definitely helps to reduce stress and pressure and ensure that their goals and wishes are met. Sometimes too, you're subject to the changes of the real estate market. Right now, although I'm pro real estate all the time, our market has slowed down quite a bit because interest rates have returned to a normal rate. So when houses were selling 18 months ago in 14 hours and people were able to get a 4% interest rate in housing, you couldn't keep a house on the market. Now houses are sitting on the market in a normal time span, 85 days, 75 days. And there's a lot more negotiation. Something else I'll point out that I think if you're not living in a home that may be important to know is when you do prepare to sell or pass on that home, you may not have a good sense of the condition of the home. And many times when people are selling a home in an emergency situation, there's so many aspects and so many things going on, they don't have the resources to repair the house, fix the house, make it where they can maximize the use or the profits. And so by doing it ahead of time, you can get ahead of the situation and be in tune with what's going on with the house. So that's just in general about downsizing. Again, you want to assess their current needs, assess what you have. Is this house something that we can convert, or do we need to look at a different residence? Assess decluttering and kind of eliminating some of those things that maybe you don't need long term. I know one of my girlfriends, she keeps every sock, every stitch of art, every piece of thing that her children created. And that's her thing. I, on the other hand, am looking to get it all in one plastic bin because I want to keep what's valuable and not just everything. Neither approach is wrong. We just have two different approaches. And it's that same way when you're thinking about decluttering and downsizing. And it's like, really, do I need to keep 10 of the same thing? Or is there a way for me to keep the memories, the legacy, but make it more compact and useful for the space where I'm going? And then, we talked about evaluating the current living situation. Sometimes with, as people age, they find themselves quite alone, or they don't want to be alone. So there's everywhere, builders are popping up communities, these senior communities or retirement communities, 55 and up communities. I showed a great one the other weekend that had a pickleball court. It had a spa. It had an entertainment kind of center. And it was as I was touring the grounds, there were some ladies who were meeting for book club. There was another group that was going to sit in the hot tub. It was very communal. And so I had engaged and I had a conversation with one of the ladies, and she said she moved here from New Jersey. She didn't really have a lot of friends and family in that area. And when she moved down here, she loved this area. And it's an Indian Trail. I don't know if you're familiar with Indian Trail. It's a little further out, but she was able to find a group of people that she could connect with. They have a lot of things right on site. This particular community is a resort style living. So they have like a chef quality kitchen where they do cooking classes. They had a yoga studio on site, yoga fitness studio on site. They had high technology fitness room. And this is all within the walking distance of the community. And so when you're thinking about downsizing and you're trying to convince your loved ones that, hey, it might be time to think about downsizing, it might be a good idea to say, hey, let's go look at some of these communities where they do have some resources and give them a feel for it. Maybe kind of seeing what's out there and having a feel for what's available will give them a sense of how this could work best for them. Took those glasses off. They have a nice glare. So we talked about, everything as far as it relates to downsizing and things of that nature. I would say a fair time frame to start the process is about 6 to 8 months before you're actually ready to make the move. Some people say I would rather move in the summer because of the weather. Some people start that process. They want to build a home and then they want to move. They have a home to sell. I was very fortunate earlier this year. I had one of my classmates who has trusted me with both of her parents. And I really respect that and appreciate that because she and her husband are both real estate professionals. And they called me when it was time to sell their mom and her mom and dad's house. And I'm so honored that I was able to assist in that process. It was different assisting in listing a house and helping to relocate. But we were able to get it done almost seamlessly and to get her in a situation where she's in a community where she has other people to connect with, and it's not so closed off. Some of the communities, some of the senior communities have meal preparation, and I'm not talking about dependent care. I'm talking about just community-wide meal preparation, transportation, things of that nature. I will provide a link to, following today's live, of questions to ask when you go visit these 55 and up senior communities. And I will tell you, if you visit any new home community, especially the 55 and up new home communities, even if you're not sure which realtor you want to use, put a realtor's name down. You can always put my name down. I'm not going to hold you to it. But if you don't do that, if you decide to buy in that community, they will not, a lot of times they won't let you bring a realtor in. And I'll provide a link to another live cast where I talk about the importance of having a realtor in the new construction process. The agents on site are not your realtors. They are not working for your best interest. They're great people, but their job is to protect the builder and to work with the builder. And so it's in your best interest to have a realtor on your side. And I'll go ahead and answer this age-old question. You don't save any money by not using a realtor. The builder is not going to say, oh, well, you didn't use a realtor, so we'll take this much off the price of the home. That never happens. In addition to the 55 and up communities, you have a lot of cottage style homes being built, patio homes, and even townhomes can be a great fit because they're interconnected. And if the layout of the townhome works for you, it can be a great option for your loved one. Okay, so we have covered downsizing. I provided a great amount of information about that. I will provide some links to valuable information as it relates to downsizing. The next thing we're going to talk about, and we kind of touched on a little bit, was aging in place. And so if you have ever had to look at long-term care or retirement homes or facilities for loved ones, you know that they are extremely expensive. And I think one time I read on Facebook where a lady booked cruises every month because it was cheaper for her to go on cruises get food every day, have her room cleaned every day, and enjoy the benefits of a cruise was less expensive than being in a retirement home. Plus, she had a lot more fun. And so a lot of people now are considering, if I'm going to age in place, meaning if I'm going to seek the care that I need or the care that my loved one needs in my current home, how do I do that? Well, part of that goes back to that downsizing conversation and seeking housing that accommodates that. There's some people who may need nursing care in home, sometimes even overnight care in home. So you want to keep that in mind if that's something that you need now or foresee needing in the immediate future. Of course, no one can see way down the line, but there are a lot of people who are choosing to, instead of go to a home or go to some type of facility, to age in place and to maybe convert a home that they have or move to a different home to make it more suitable to their needs and what they are presently need. When it comes to aging in place, some of the questions you may ask or want to consider is there a full bedroom on the main level or a room that would fit as a full bedroom? Is there a full bathroom for bathing on the main level of the home, or something that can be converted? People have gotten really creative and converted garages. Something else that you want to think about is some people have a yard that is large enough where they're building in-law suites. May take a tiny house and convert it, may build a small 1,000 square foot home that is not connected to the primary house, but it's close enough where if you need to have loved ones close by. You have to check with your local city ordinance. I know Mecklenburg County has changed some of the guidelines on accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and expanded the guidelines to allow more of that, because they know we're busting at the seams and we need more housing. And a lot of it needs to be affordable housing. And, the space in the area that you need for that is not as big as you may think. So there are some great options there. In my role as a notary, I did a closing one time where I'm not sure what the relation was, but maybe a mother-in-law or aunt. She sold the house to her family. The lending side of it wasn't my business, but she sold the house to a family member, and then in exchange, they cared for her. She lived in the home. They were able to care for her. They were able to get the care that she needed. In addition, the medical care that she needed to come into the home. I think, mind you, I have horror stories about that signing, which we can talk about later, because there were goats in the yard and pygmy horses, which I should have known. Drove up and there were goats and pygmy horses, that it was going to be a unique situation. But I thought it was very interesting that they made sure she was taken care of in exchange for, I'm assuming that she sold them the house and all of her interest in the house, so that when she's no longer here, there's no probate, there's no will that has to be acknowledged. It's their house. And so that was a very, in my opinion, smart move to make. All right, so that leads me right into the next conversation of estate planning. Estate planning sounds like a scary, daunting task, but it's literally protecting your assets and wishes by defining estate plan and having the right legal documents in place to make sure that if you're incapable or unavailable to make decisions about your health or your legacy, you have provided clear directions on what to do. Again, nothing I say here is official legal or real estate advice, but I highly recommend that everyone, I don't care if you pull one off of line or what, have a health care power of attorney. Most hospitals have a copy that you can utilize. I have a in-person estate planning session coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'll post a link to that here, where for a very minimal fee, you will get a basic will, a healthcare power of attorney, and several other estate documents that would be useful for anyone. But a healthcare power of attorney, very important. If you find yourself in a situation where you're not able to make a medical decision for yourself, there are clear instructions about whether or not you want to be intubated, whether or not you want to be kept on life support, whether or not you want to be resuscitated should you need resuscitation. Some people have certain religious guidelines and religious questions that they want to honor, or religious beliefs that they want to honor as it relates to their health, receiving blood, receiving, certain artificial life preservations. And if you don't know that, if you haven't written that down, your loved ones are left to guess and make decisions. And sometimes that loved one may not be who you think it is. So the very main important thing to do is to have a healthcare power of attorney. As far as a will, most people, if you have, general assets, a house, a car, some jewelry, a basic simple will would be sufficient. You don't need an extensive, long estate plan for that. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a workshop in a couple weeks where I will share. And if you're viewing this after the date of the workshop, I'll have resources that you can reach out to me and access to do a simple will. Unfortunately, sometimes I'm called to the hospital or to a nursing home or bedside, and people are trying to finalize and prepare their estate plans at the very, last minute. And it's hard because there's so much going on. You're trying to make the person comfortable. You're trying to, it's hard to face the inevitable. So, it's hard to think about, did I include this person? Did I include this asset? Did I, mention this or that? And sometimes that's just how it is. Life comes at you fast and it happens like that. But if you have the time, the holidays, the end of year, make this a task that you do at the end of the year. If you have family members who are not inclined, they're nervous. A lot of times people don't want to have to think about their own death and passing. It's a very hard thought to have. I will have some resources that you can put in their hands and say, hey, loved one, I am giving this to you. Whatever you choose to do with it, it's going to have instructions on how to fill it out, instructions on what you should do with it after it's completed, instructions on where to preserve it, who to give it to. And then they can do what they want with it. You've given it to them. You've done your part. And you can say, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to, get your assets or get what I'm due. I'm doing this because I care about you and I want to make sure that you're taken care of now and forever. Perfect way to put it. I am going to be providing, following today's live, I'm going to be interviewing an insurance agent who's going to talk about life insurance and burial insurance. Friends, let's not have, listen, it happens, GoFundMe to bury our loved ones. But sometimes people aren't feeling so charitable. And you don't want how you honor your loved ones to be based upon how other people choose to donate or not. I'll tell you, my husband and I, we suffered a very significant loss in our family a couple years ago. And at that moment, we decided we bought burial plots. We bought burial policies. At various times through our lives, we've had medical procedures where we had to prepare healthcare power of attorneys so that each one of us is clear about what the other person would want if we're not able to decide, or if we're in a situation where we need someone else to make a healthcare decision for us. We've recently started the process of finalizing or updating our estate documents. And I recommend anybody do that. Full transparency, I was a little nervous to travel really, really far, other countries, things like that, because my children were young And I thought to myself, my goodness, what would happen to them if something happened to me? Well, estate documents is a perfect place to address those type of concerns. Um, I even recommend people leave letters to children and loved ones. If you have a particular organization that you want to support or you're fond of, include them. Include instructions on how you want to contribute to that. It could be a church, it could be a sorority, it could be a nonprofit. If you have specific relics or family heirlooms or jewelry that you want to go to specific family members, say that. Specify. You don't have to tell them up front. You certainly don't have to tell everybody. You don't have to share any of these wishes with anyone. Once you prepare a will, you only need to sign it. It's best to also have it notarized and then keep it somewhere safe, in a lockbox, at a bank. Some people choose to file it with the clerk's office, but it does not have to be filed at the date it's created. It can be filed at a later time. It can be filed after, when it's time to go to probate. So there's a very simple way to address that. If someone is in immediate need of providing their legacy, go on Google, find the most simple document you can find, and have them fill it out, sign it, have it notarized. There's some other steps in there that I can recommend that I won't go into on this call, but listen, these are documents that I think people are afraid to complete until the last minute. They don't get clarity. Power of attorney, not just your healthcare power of attorney, but on bank accounts, insurance funds, VA benefits, things like that. I have seen more times than not where people need to engage other resources, and the family members who are advocating for them may or may not have the proper authority to do that. Having those resources in place, having someone named as power of attorney, and I'll be candid, sometimes it causes a dispute because people may think, well, why is it A and not B? Or why did you choose this or not that? But if the person who is the subject of the decision is making the decision, they've chosen who they trust to make the decision. And it's not for us to decide why did they pick them. That's something for counseling, therapy, another day. But as it relates to making decisions, it's a good idea to go ahead and put those things in place. Go ahead and have an attorney, a financial advisor, those people named or in your preview or purview, so that you can address these situations and questions, and it's not such a panic or urgency at the time that it is occurring. Even sometimes people say, you know what, I'm healthy, I'm fine, but if something happens to me, I want to be buried in this funeral, this graveyard, by this funeral home. These are the things that I want to be said or respected at my funeral. I've had people say, I don't want any flowers. Any flowers need to be donated to this facility. Or instead of flowers, people donate to a college fund. Or instead of a repast, I would, like for my friends and family to feed the homeless in my honor. There's anything that you say, and of course you're not going to be here to confirm it, but anything that you desire, you can put those in your final wishes and have your legacy, your goals, your morals, your whatever you stand for continue. There's a lot of things changing in that space. Some people are choosing to not be entombed in a coffin, as what has traditionally been done. Some people say, hey, don't spend a bunch of money on those things. I would prefer to be cremated, or I want to be, I just want a graveside service, whatever it may be. And I know this is kind of feels like a morbid conversation to have when we're talking about downsizing and aging in place. But honestly, these are like steps in the same progression. And I think that as we're having these conversations over Thanksgiving, Look around, notice your family members, notice the home, notice how they are engaging, and say, I love you, I want to support you, I want to be here for you, and I want you to be here for you. And I want you to consider just some of these things that may help you maximize the joy and the opportunities at this time. None of us know when our time is up, but at least sometimes we can rest a slightly easier when we've made provisions and made clear what it is we want, how we want things to happen. And so I want to open the floor up for questions. And I did have a few people email me questions beforehand. And so I do want to answer a couple of questions. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to not only email me if you're not on the live, but to put them in the live chat. So one of the questions that came to me was about family members being offended and other family members thinking that you're trying to get ahead in getting something from the estate. And I think the way to address that is to make it clear that your intention is not to get something, but that your intention and that your conversation is just about their care and comfort. And stay out of the conversation about divvying up assets or things of that nature. And instead say, hey, listen, I want you to have this conversation with someone you trust. Here's a couple of attorneys I'm glad to set up for you. There are a number of resources on the AARP website, on the VA website, and different websites that may be accessible depending upon military status or age and things of that nature. So encourage your family member to have the conversation with someone who isn't expected to receive anything, but maybe is a good friend or a sounding board, or point them to maybe provide them some videos where they can look at where people have made decisions and what they've made those decisions based off of. I got another question about insurance and how does life insurance and insurance play into the equation. And so I'll address this in two parts. I'll address this as bank accounts and insurance. Whenever you have insurance policies or bank accounts or different financial accounts, you can indicate on there not only who is the owner, but who is a co-owner, who is a right of survivor. If someone is a co-owner, that means that everything in that account is 100% theirs as well. Now, if two people are alive and they split, of course, it's 50-50. But when one person is no longer here and the other person is a co-owner, it's 100% their account. And so that's been something that's come up a couple times in situations, and I did want to point that out. On policies, you can name anybody you want to be a recipient of insurance proceeds. When an estate is opened, when someone has an estate opened, of course, you have to go through probate, which is where the court decides what assets are to be paid, who's responsible for kind of managing the estate. A lot of times people don't realize there are estate taxes that have to be paid, and there are debts. Those debts don't die with the debtor. They continue. And so they look at the assets of an estate and they decide how they're to be distributed. And so keeping that in mind, if you're estate planning and you're thinking about, well, if something were to happen to me, I want to make sure that there's enough resources in place for my loved ones to maintain for 6 months. That's something that you can incorporate into the planning. When people pass away, their mortgage, their car payment, their credit card payments, yeah, you can notify those places, hey, this person's passed away. We're in the middle of trying to settle the estate. Please allow us some time. You can do that, but at some point, the payments still become due. You still have to address the obligations, the financial obligations that person may have had. Sometimes that's even more so if the person has had to be in a facility, or they have, Medicaid has a bill outstanding that needs to be addressed. And so things to keep in mind: the more planning you have ahead of time, the easier it is on the end of the equation. Um, and so I think that answers the question about bank accounts and insurance. The last thing is, what do I do with all this stuff? I will tell you, I have had this conversation with my very own parents, because they have a house bigger than they need. They have a lot of stuff. And my dad says, what am I going to do with all this stuff? And listen, I say divide things up into two piles. What's keep, it has memories, or I can use it right now, or what needs to be donated or thrown away. There's probably, in everybody's home, there's probably boxes or items that they're memories, but they're not necessarily something that we need moving forward. And so it may be that there are services that will come in and help declutter and downsize. One is the organization Goddess, who comes in. Admittedly, I'm partially a hoarder, and she came in and she helped me decide, because I had decision analysis paralysis is what I call it. I had decision paralysis. I could not decide what I needed to keep and what I needed to give away. And I'll be honest, I recommend people do that on a biannual basis, half a year, every 6 months. Have someone come in, pay a small fee, help you just declutter and get rid of stuff and memorialize what is important. I lose so much because I have too many pictures and books and papers, and it can get overwhelming. So I know if it gets overwhelming for me, it can get overwhelming for people who may be in a different stage of life. And it's okay to say, I need some help. I need someone to come in and help me reduce and downsize and declutter and get ready for what's next. Even if it's not moving and packing and moving to a new house, maybe it's just I need to enjoy more of the house that I'm in. I need to maximize the space that I'm in, and I can't do it because I have too much stuff. Another example, when my husband and I got married, I had so many dishes. We registered for formal dining wear and casual dining wear and everyday dining wear. I had so many sets of dishes and cups and plates. And a couple of years ago, I was looking in my china cabinet, which I really don't know why I need that, but I'm a Southern girl, and Southern girls got to have a china cabinet. But I was looking at my china cabinet, and I had all these dishes I'd never used. They were taking up space, and I had some other like pictures and little things that I did want to keep that I couldn't even display because I had all these dishes. Honey, I packed those dishes up, cups, everything, and I put them on Facebook Marketplace, and I sold an 8-person setting, dining wear setting set for like $50. And within like 4 hours, the lady was there to pick them up. She picked those dishes up, put them in the back of her car, and I was glad that I could give her something. I could, first of all, make a little money, whatever, but I could give her something that those items would get used, and they were beautiful. And I held on to them for years and years and years, and we probably used them twice. People just don't have the old school in-home dinners like we used to have. And I don't know who I thought I was when I was getting married and registering for all this stuff, because I registered for a bunch of it. I think because that's what people told me I needed to do. Whatever. It was fun, but that's another good example of I had too much of it. I just couldn't even use it. I couldn't appreciate it. And it was a perfect example of, okay, don't judge your parents for having too much stuff, because sis, you have a little bit too much yourself. So let's get rid of some of this stuff and downsize. There are people, let me bring this up. This is one of my pet peeves I hear. If you've ever been to storage, and I have to say this with a little bit of grain of salt, storage facilities. A lot of times people will put a lot of stuff in storage facilities or garage. or a storage at the back of the house, and they're saving it for something, sometimes some whatever. And depending upon the age of the person we're talking about, sometimes that saving comes from, the era that they grew up in. They just saved everything. Or, sometimes when people have been through something traumatic or lost a loved one, they tend to save every little thing from that person or that time. But when you're thinking about those spaces, especially like a storage locker that you're paying for, you have to really think about, is the item that I'm storing worth what I'm paying to keep it? Now, I recently put some furniture in storage, and I really went back and forth about whether or not I wanted to do that, because I don't foresee needing the furniture again in my house, but I really wasn't sure if I was ready to get rid of it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get this storage facility, but I'm going to give myself 6 months to make a decision. I put it on my calendar. In 6 months, if this decision is not made, the furniture is being sold. At least it's preserved, it's not exposed to the elements, but I'm not going to pay for this for a year, because I'll end up paying for this stuff twice, paying for the storage facility. Had a family member who had a storage facility and was paying like $400 a month, and went in there and it was just a bunch of wet papers and old furniture and stuff nobody wanted, and stuff eventually that had to be thrown away. And so it didn't serve anybody. And it was a lot of money wasted on storage. Same with the garage. There are a lot of folks who aren't utilizing their garage. They have storage in there, and you look in there and they're Jet magazines from 1977. I mean, unless they're well preserved and you can sell them on the secondary market, it's probably not a keeper. Or shoes. I had one client clean out their garage and say, oh my God, I found all these baby shoes and tennis shoes. I don't even remember when I had these shoes. They were previously a runner. And it's like, why were you saving your used shoes? Were you intending to give them to somebody? They couldn't tell me, but there were 2 or 3 boxes of shoes. Well, potentially that was space that could have been used for a car or something else that was more useful. So anyway, keeping that in mind, just thinking about what you're keeping, and what is keeping you and what is keeping you from is so important when you're thinking about this whole process of decluttering and downsizing, aging in place, making room for where you are now, and then preserving your legacy, making your intentions, your goals, and your forever plans known for your loved ones and those around you. So anyway, I appreciate those of you who have been on live with me, whether it's, I'm trying StreamYard, so I'm hoping that this is actually being streamed wherever all of the places that I intended. I am going to rebrand this and put this on some other platforms. And I'm also going to put the links to what we've talked about today in, or some of the resources that I've talked about today for you to access. So again, thank you. I'm MJ Clay, broker realtor with Carrot Properties, serving North and South Carolina, and global referral agent. And I am glad to answer any questions or provide you any information. All right. I hope you have a great night.